Hello people and welcome to another video. Today I want to tell you the 5 things that help me to keep learning art and keep me on track. When I decided I wanted to learn art, I thought I was going to be able to draw all these great ideas I had in my head, but I quickly realised that wasn't going to happen without a lot of practice. And then the more I would learn, the more I would realise how little I actually knew and how much more there is to learn. I didn't know how to draw a lot of things. I couldn't and still can't afford art school, but I have time and the desire to learn. Well, actually, it wasn't so much a desire to learn, more of a desire to create, but that's just one more thing that I would have to learn to do. I tend to get overwhelmed very easily and all the time, so these are my tips. These are my 5 tips for anyone else having trouble getting started or keeping themselves on track without feeling like you'll never get it. These things are very important to me and have been the biggest help, so perhaps you might find something in there that will help you as well. Number 1, practice patience and persistence. Soft skills are so important and underrated. You can't get anything done without them. You are going to need these 2 skills because it's going to take a long time and you will want to be prepared for the initial disappointments as best you can. I think it's normal to take multiple attempts at drawing before you start seeing progress and hopefully the results that you were looking for. But I also think that many people give up after a few tries when they aren't able to get over that initial disappointment. But if you keep going and commit to working past this stage, be patient and persistent, you will start to see the occasional successes which will spur you on and build up more successes. But you need to be able to work through that crap first before you can enjoy any successes. You might be like me and not recognize it at first because another thing that happens is your standards change as your skill gets better. This might not feel like it at the time, but if you can get through it, it is a good thing. It means you're on the path, this is okay, and it is normal. If your drawings are turning out so bad and you're really unhappy with it and you can't seem to fix it, what I do is I commit to it instead. Instead of feeling bad about it, I might make my whole session about seeing how bad I can actually draw. I might make it so bad that I end up having a laugh about it because it's just that ridiculous. I actually stuck one on my wall once for the longest time to remind me to have a laugh every now and then, but I can't show you it because when I moved into another room I lost it, so I don't know where it is. But the thing is to remember is to be persistent and patient, and the results will come in time. Number 2 is to know when you are most productive, that is most likely to sit and draw, working with your biorhythm. This was important to me once I recognised the pattern. When I was working full time, I would stay up late to do lots of things, mainly play games, but still. Of course, that was the only free time I had, but I definitely wasn't a morning person. Then around the time when I dropped down to working 4-hour shifts a day, I would try and get the earliest shifts in the morning. It would be a struggle to wake up to get to work on time, but I would be able to come home by lunch, and then that became my most productive time before I would just chill out for the rest of the evening. After a while, I did get sick and I left my job altogether. It was causing massive amounts of stress for me anyway, which didn't help, but my time management was all over the place for the longest time. I would try and keep myself busy during the day, but I would be too tired or not feeling it. But part of this was my health and other stresses at the time that I was going through. I found it so hard to just motivate myself to do anything at all, and then I would beat myself up over it, turning it into a vicious circle until I just had to accept that this is how it is now and not get so negative about it. But once I did let go, I realised that I was actually more prone to getting things done in the mornings now, which is totally different to what I usually do. Generally up until lunchtime, and after that then it's a wash. I'm too busy digesting and have no energy for anything else. My brain is out of juice and doesn't want to be told what to do anymore. The thing is, since I became aware of my rhythm, my personal rhythm, I've been trying to tweak it to get more working time for drawing and other things. And then when I'm done, I don't have to force myself to do anything else. And that is a great feeling, to be honest. I'm more in line with myself, if that makes sense. There's less friction. Of course, I have days where I just can't bring myself to do any drawing, and I did fight that for a while, but I'm honestly getting sick of fighting with myself, so I just accept it. And it seems that when I'm ready to come back to drawing, that I'm able to put better quality time in. The important thing is to know your personal rhythm and work with it, not against it. Pay attention to when you're most likely to do certain things instead of trying to force yourself to do them when it feels like it's going against your will. Number 3 is to make your goals easy to achieve if you have trouble setting and working on them. Instead of working on goals like creating 2 master drawings in a day, aim for 20 minutes of drawing something, anything. Could be heads, eyes, body part, animals, whatever it is that you're interested in. Creating huge goals can be off-putting and overwhelming, especially when you are just starting out. The good drawings can feel so far away that it makes it too easy to give up altogether. You can have a big goal, but once you make it, I recommend focusing on the smaller, easier to achieve goals. Basically the tasks that make the steps along the way, the grunt work. Focusing on how much time you might draw in a day. Also focusing on something that you want to learn, such as 30 minutes on perspective boxes each morning or 20 minutes on doodling in the afternoons. Fundamentals like value scales twice a week, that kind of thing. Then a slightly larger or more challenging goal might be one sketchbook drawing 3 times a week. That's my current goal, which I didn't achieve this week. But going back to what I said before, I'm not fighting with myself over it. I'll just get back on track this week. Anything extra you commit to is a bonus, but as a minimum, and you do want to have a minimum, you want something that you can achieve now and build up those small achievements and successes, because that's what matters. You are building up a history or a memory of being able to set out a task and complete it. Even better if you can make them into habits. This way you will be working on the processes and not the results, which is more reliable. The processes are reliable, that is, not the results. The results can always be hit and miss. So if we trust in the process, the results will come. Fourth is start by copying or tracing actually. Like I said at the start, I didn't know how to draw many things. The only things I remember drawing in my early years were horses, and that was when I was in primary school. I vaguely remember having issues. For some reason, I couldn't get them right no matter how many times I tried, and I remember getting frustrated with myself. I also didn't want to give up back then because I loved horses. However, I remember these plastic stencil things of horse parts, and you could draw what you wanted by lining up a little hole in the template, which actually helped me to learn how off I really was and what my problem areas were, which was the cheeks. I do remember it was the cheeks and the length of the back. I would have really long horses and huge cheeks. But by using those stencils, I was able to learn how it feels to draw those parts in the correct shape. And I remember it felt weird at first because it felt like the stencil was wrong, which of course it wasn't. I was just getting used to drawing those bits that I used to get wrong in the right shapes. So my fourth tip is to trace over any problem areas so you can avoid getting muscle memory built up drawing it the wrong way, and instead get used to the feeling of how it should be drawn in the right way with the right shapes, especially if you are so far off from reality like I was over and over and can't seem to fix it. I have no idea if the stencil things are still around. I couldn't find any on the internet of this particular type, because it could be that you could put a horse in any position. Of course it was always in profile, but it could be rearing up if you wanted to. You just had to line up the little holes. It was really cool. Tracing will do the same thing, and copying over pictures of what you want to draw can teach you where you need to put your line. Learning how a particular shape actually works, I look at it as training for the hand, and I guess training for the brain to see the shapes correctly, because there's something going on between what we see and, the brain interprets our shapes that we draw aren't the same thing. Occasionally I'll still draw over junk mail, and I think it's a great way to reinforce the proportion and shapes. Eventually you will want to try to copy without the need for tracing, but definitely work out those massive errors so you can get on with it. But please don't trace and pass it off as your own work. It's just training. Keep it to yourself. The fifth tip is start with the simple stuff. Is what I'm drawing simple enough? Again, this is more specific to actually drawing practice. It's really easy to get lost in details and not see the bigger, simpler picture. Or we have chosen something we might not be ready for yet. So pick simple references, maybe with a slight challenge, not a massive undertaking before you might be ready. So I've chosen my reference to study from. I'll take a few moments to really observe it. I might see the details first, but if I take a bit more time, then I'll be able to see the bigger relationships, the easier stuff that I might be able to take on first. Never start with the details. If you do start with the details and you can make it work, more power to you, but if you can't, go for the bigger stuff. Things like how much of the page does the figure take up? What's the overall shape it takes? Can I see any large shapes made by the head or the way the arms are posed and aligned? Are there any significant negative shapes I should be aware of that will make my life easier? For instance, it might be a triangular space between both the legs when taking the feet into account, or the inside of an arm that might be sitting on the hip. How many big angles can I see? I first look for the angle of the head, then the shoulders and the hips, but also the angles of the arms and the legs. Can I find any relationships to make it easier to understand? These things can be really hard to actually interpret at first, and there might be many corrections. It's not just seeing, but really taking it in and understanding what's going on. Sometimes we don't actually draw the drawing, we just draw the pieces, because we can lose sight of the big picture in the rush to get drawing, which I guess leads back to the patience thing. So in summary, we have number 1, patience and persistence. Really, it is the best tip, the soft skills to cultivate a better mindset for learning. 2. Know when you're most productive. Pay attention to your personal rhythms. 3. Make easy, achievable, more process-orientated goals. Make the task easy enough so you can learn to be successful at completing them, not result-orientated where there's a high chance of failure. So learn to be able to rely on yourself while learning. 4 is trace overs for training to get over those massive errors that you might keep repeating. Learn what you're doing wrong and how to draw it the right way with the right shapes. And lastly, number 5 is start with the simple stuff. Simple references, simple shapes. Take time to look for the easier, bigger stuff you can draw. You can slowly increase the challenge as you get better, but being able to see the bigger picture and refine from there will help in the future when you want to be able to do it without thinking. You've got to practice it first. This last one is actually pretty cool. It made me start to see things in the world and people differently. I could see all sorts of different shapes I didn't see before, and they became really interesting to me. So that's it. I hope this helps someone. It can be tough going it alone, especially in the non-professional sense. You are the only one holding yourself accountable, and it can be so easy just to give up at the first failure when it gets hard. I try to make things easy for myself so I can at least feel like I'm still learning and trying out things. It might always work out, but I know that I can do this much, and this much is enough.